Welcome back again. It's closers. I'm back. Pete Alonso's back. David Aardsma's back. All the good stuff is back. I'm James the Greek. Join me as usual, David Aardsma. DA, how are you, buddy?
What is going on, James? God, you look good. I love the new lighting. I love everything about it. I've enjoyed seeing your blurry face, but now your clear face looks a little better.
You said clear with an
Clear.
L. Yes. Okay.
Clear.
Good. How you doing, buddy? You did a great job last week without having me to pull the wagon. I was very impressed, to tell you the truth. I don't know how you spoke all that time without me. And there were so many things that you said that I was watching. For those of you who don't know, I had surgery last week, and I was sitting there typing on the chat. I was texting David all the good stuff, and I really wish I could have come in, but such is life. Today we have a very special guest joining us, Mr. Rowland-Smith, formerly of the Seattle Mariners, the Hyphen. And this dude is special because not only is he a former pitcher, not only is he the host of The Top Step, but he's also your brother-in-law. So he is my brother from another mother's brother-in-law, which makes me absolutely nothing to him. Let's bring him on now, though.
What's up, fellas? How you doing?
What's going on? Now, before we get started, I'm a little insulted because last week on the show, David had the audacity to compare your hair to mine. So right now, David, I'm going to put you on the spot. Who's got it better, your brother from another mother or your brother-in-law?
Without a doubt, Ryan. Ryan's hair is it's always been legit. I love it. And he's changes it over time. Like, I've got one look. You've had one look forever, James, since I've known you. Ryan changes it up a little bit and like adjusts with the times. My facial hairs adjust with the times.
No. Hey, listen, I've had I was back in Australia with some friends, family, and they said, "Did you got to change? Like, you've had the same hairstyle that kind of I call it a douchey hairstyle, where they're just using some of the words from my friends for like 7 years. You got to switch up." So I tried to grow it out. Didn't work. It's starting to show some grays through there as well. The big question is, it's how much time do you spend with it? This, and I'm not joking, I'm being very honest. This literally took me 45 seconds to a minute. So if you take longer than that, you know what? You got me beat because the dedication.
Bro, it takes me 30 seconds. I'm good. I'm out.
Okay, we're good.
I wake up, so that's it.
Yours is more maintenance than ours because you got to shave that thing on the sides and everything else.
Yeah. No, I'm talking about in the morning. I get it. I got to get it cut, whatever. Once 3 weeks or something like that. I'm talking about just in the morning, just getting it ready. It's a quick, some water, straight through, bang, done. So there we go.
So I'm really excited. I've been looking forward to talking to you for a while, just because of the familial bonds that you guys have. Like, I can't imagine. So it's really weird because I have a sister. She's 4 years younger than me, and she ended up marrying my former coworker at a restaurant. So now you're married to your former coworker's sister. I find it very strange. And my biggest issue is I look exactly like my sister. So my friend, when he goes to kiss my sister, it's very strange. What is it like for you? Because Andrea and David look alike. I want to know. That's just weird.
Look.
Amanda, excuse me.
I'm telling you right now. Yeah, there is obviously, look, brother and I don't know, David, if you think you look like your sister. I look at my sisters as a little bit, I've got two older sisters, as a little bit, the same, whether it be chin, ears, whatever it may be. However, anytime we're talking about there is nothing, right? David does not cross my mind. I'll put it that way.
Thank God.
Now, that has been brought up though. Everyone's like, "Oh yeah, they look similar." I'm like, "Hey, that's enough."
I don't see it. I've never seen it. I somewhat, especially when I was younger, I had blonde hair like then. But like,
I've seen those photos. I've seen those photos.
Yeah, and like that was probably closer. And obviously, as I got older, definitely different. I will say this: I've never been like, when I find girls attractive, tall blondes, I'm like done. Like, nope, like I'm good. Like, growing up with a sister and like having those fights every day and like living through the teenage years, it's like I'm good. Short brunettes. That's a complete opposites.
It's funny. I remember the first day my sister went to high school. Some kid had the balls to call my house. There were no cell phones back then. Some kid called my house and asked for my sister, and I go, "Who are you?" And he says, "Oh, I'm Dean. I'm in your sister's class." I'm like, "Don't call here ever again." She didn't get a single phone call throughout high school that I knew of. So I set the tone. What was it like when you started dating your teammate's sister? What did he say? How did you guys meet? I need the whole story.
Well, okay, so Amanda was up visiting in Seattle. We're playing the Yankees. I remember it, and I'm just going back to the actual days. It was a weekend series, and it was, I believe, I pitched the Thursday night game because we had, David, you won't remember this. We had this little just randomly Australian chiropractor intern in the training room. I don't know if you remember this. He was like, this kid was like. He was like 19 years old, and he's sitting in the training room. And by the way, you got to remember, I'm from Australia. No one has a clue unless you actually play baseball, anything about baseball, right? So this kid's from like Perth. He's sitting in the training room like, where am I? Like he's in a big league clubhouse. Like one of the trainers comes up to me and says, "Hey, man, I know you're pitching today, but we've got this young Australian kid." I was like, "Oh, where is he?" Because I get, before games, get nervous. I like to try and chat as much as I can. So I'm talking to this kid, and he's like, "Oh, yeah, this is awesome." Anyway, I'm getting there. So after that game, I had him come out and sit in the dugout. And Dave, I don't know if you know this or not, but I'm there, and I've come in from warming up, and guys were talking about Amanda because she was sitting. You could see her from the dugout, right? And then some of the teammates like, "Oh yeah, there's David's sister." And I'm like, I'm dialed in on pitching, right? I'm about to pitch, but I remember going, "Oh yeah, okay, just having a look, just a quick glance before I go take them out." But this Aussie kid is like, "Oh yeah, who's David?" I said, "Oh, David Aardsma, he's in the bullpen." He goes, "Oh, okay." And I'm like, "What are you looking at, kid? Like you're 19 years old, beat it, I'm like, first of all, you've been here for 10 minutes. It's friggin' packed house.
Already in the stands.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I'm like, "What are you doing? Get off the top." First of all, you shouldn't be on the top step anyway. Beat it. Anyway, it was so funny. I remember that vividly. And then that weekend, I took this kid out a couple times. Well, Sunday afternoon, sure enough, there's this little hole in the wall called the Little Red Hen in Green Lake. It was a little country bar, believe it or not. And David was there with his wife Andrea, a couple of our other teammates. And this kid was just wearing me out. We had a travel day the next day. And he's like, "Hey, can we go out again tonight?" I'm like, "I'm tired, dude. Like, what are we doing?" I'm like, "All right, because you're here, I'll go out." And lo and behold, Amanda was there hanging out, and she was on her own. I was like, "Oh, this is great." Well, this kid, David, I don't know if I told you this either. This kid's like, "Hey, man, like, who's that? Hook me up with her." I'm like, first of all, big age difference, number one, right? And number two, you got no chance, kid. Like, what are you doing? And so here I am trying to battle it out with this 19-year-old to try and talk to Amanda. And sure enough, we hung out there. We went to another place after that and got a number, and the rest is history. But I will say this. I was a little nervous about talking to Dave because I was talking to Amanda, but we hadn't seen each other. We were just chatting on the phone. And Amanda had said to me, "Hey, have you spoke to David?" And I said, "Oh, kind of, not yet." And then Mark Lowe, one of our other teammates in the outfield, he's like, "Hey, man, I think David knows you're talking to his sister. You might want to talk to him." I'm like, "Oh, man." And so in my head, I'm like, I'm waiting for him to get a save, right? There'd been a few days for him for a save to happen. Like there wasn't a save opportunity. And comes in a home game. We're back from, I think, Detroit, back at home. Comes in, gets a save. He's happy. Team's happy. Music's in the clubhouse. I walk up to him because our lockers were pretty close. I said, "Hey, David, I need to talk to you." He spins his chair and says, "Hey, I know you're talking to my sister. Just do it the right way, please." I was like, "Yep, all good. That's it." That was it. Awesome. So there you go. That was it.
But David, you're a better man than I am because I would have
me like
baseball about him.
Ryan's a good guy. Ryan's a great guy. I knew him obviously. That was the second year, right? Or that was 10.
That was that was first year 2009. It was 2009.
Okay, so but we had known each other like the whole year. Dude, Ryan's a great guy. Like I'm not worried about it. Like if it was Mark Lowe,
we known each other for a while.
Yeah, if it was Mark Lowe, we'd talk about it. We'd have a separate conversation. Like Ryan's a great guy, and I'm like, okay, like we hadn't really gotten to know each other because I'd been around a lot, and you obviously were a Mariner guy, and you'd been there. Everyone already knew you, but also like starter and I'm a reliever. I'm journeyman. I'm already on like 5 teams already. And I'm like only played like 3 years in the big leagues and I've already got 5 teams. And so I'm like just trying to do my thing and like hanging out with the relievers. We all know each other, but it's not like we're hanging out every day. But you know, you hear stories from everybody. You know what's going on in the clubhouse, and like good guy. So like, just be a good guy. That's it. Just be a good guy. And then,
by the way, and
a big girl, she can figure herself out.
It wasn't like we were like everyone was like knew about it, was giving David crap about it or me crap or anything like that. It was just kind of like I didn't, it wasn't. And by the way, like I had him and like we're just chatting on the phone. The first time I went on a date with Amanda, you guys had your fantasy football draft. And I remember I was like, oh man, I said to Amanda, I was like, just don't come in the lobby of the hotel because everyone was gathering.
Place.
That would be brutal, and especially Dave with all that, the whole bullpen crew, these clowns out in the bullpen with all their helmets and all that. I was like, I don't want to do that. Like, I will cop it. He will probably cop it. I don't know. I just didn't want to. Yeah, so we kept it, kind of quiet. And again, we're just dating too. It wasn't like we'll get married next week, but yeah. So it was all
last thing on this little family deal we have going on over here. David, you said if it was Mark Lowe, it would have been a problem. Who was the one guy on that Seattle team that you say, oh, crap, you talking to my sister? Get the hell out. You're not going anywhere near her.
Probably myself.
Well, yourself, you're not included, David.
The list is long.
Yeah, no, it was this. It wasn't that. Mark is actually an awesome guy. Mark was great, but like it was just we were all idiots down the bullpen. The starters were actually classy. The starters had their shit together. They actually were good guys. Like they took their stuff serious. We took being absolute jackasses serious, and around the game, everything was focused about the game. But we were just like, dude, we would poop under each other's chairs.
I saw the painting. I get it.
Horrible stuff would happen down there. So it's like we'll just be the bullpen, just stay away from it. Like, but all the starters, it was either him or Doug Fister, and like Doug Fister without a doubt.
There you go. Yeah, there you go. He was a good.
I'd let him marry.
I don't even know though. Isn't he Mormon?
Yes, good guy.
Not that it matters. I'm saying, but like, he
wouldn't drink with us. He wouldn't like. He would. Yeah. He was our DD. So whenever we were going out, like. Doug would come out with Doug, just keep us in line. Just don't let us.
But Doug was that dude. Did you notice too? Just real quick on that, we'll move on here in a second. But you remember Doug? If he like gave up like a 6 spot, he'd walk around like he was like 6'5" or something. He'd walk around with his shoulders down like this. But if he dominated, he had hat backwards, music pumping. Oh, he was big time, man. He could get any girl in the world if he gave up a. Gave up a 7 innings 1 run. He was the man. He was so funny like that. Anyway, moving on.
All right. So you host a great show called The Top Step that you've actually had your brother-in-law on. And you're talking about the Seattle Mariners. Let's just start there. What the hell is going on with that team? Because they have pissed me off more than any other team in baseball with the exception of Baltimore.
Right. Yeah, it's been an interesting offseason. I think the one thing with Seattle, with the Mariners, going into this offseason, it's not like because Jerry Dipoto, I listened to him talk the other day, and it's not like they're not trying to push and make moves and everything else. I think their biggest advantage, you got the #1 farm system in baseball now, which is huge. I know. Look, if any Mariner fans listen to this and they want to roll their eyes, have at it. I'm fine with that. But when you have that kind of, that kind of leverage in your farm system, we all know, and you have that starting pitching, 5 guys last year that were really dominant, arguably the best rotation in the game. Then you have some leverage. So I think, in my opinion, I feel like they went in that route in regards to, okay, we can bring guys over here potentially via trade. They love to have the controllable players. Pete Alonso, that his name came up, that just is not a fit for what they want to do for multiple reasons, beside the fact that fans just want to see, some big splashy multi-year deal. Like the last guy they did, Mitch Garver, a 2-year deal, but the last guy was really a Cy Young Award winner, and that was Robbie Ray a couple of years ago, and they ended up trading him away. But I think for them, the push this winter was big on that trade, or getting that big trade, whether it be giving up one of their starting pitchers, or giving up, some guys on the farm. And they have had a bunch of plenty of requests. Obviously, that's public, but they've had some proposals that just for them they're just not ready to pull the trigger on. I think that I'll be honest with you. I know Jerry DiPolo. He said this a couple of years ago when they got Gino Suarez right before spring training, and they made that big move to fill their infield up. I think at this point, when you're talking, February into March, teams start to get desperate, and those trade packages start to change. So I think you'll still see that one last move for the Seattle Mariners right before spring training, and it'll be a good, talented player, hopefully an offensive player. It may hurt a little bit if they give up one of their starting pitchers, which I'll be honest with you, and David, you know this too, mate. Like, there is no way these 5 guys you just had in 2024 are going to repeat like they did in 2025, because it just doesn't happen. Like, they got some luck last year, even with Emerson Hancock just kind of filling the gaps with Brian Wu, who was sitting out here and there. It just doesn't happen. So I can see one of their starting pitchers, whoever makes sense for them. And I think those trade packages are going to get a little bit better for them, even though the spring training's around the corner in just a couple of weeks. But you may see something right before spring or during spring training. But they kind of have to go that way of trade. But yes, they have money. But I just think when you look at some of the free agents out there, it's like, what really makes sense? You're going to have to overpay for someone, and they just don't want to do that. They just don't want to overpay.
Yeah, but I don't understand why they were going after. There were so many guys before that were reasonable. You could have traded for Paul Goldschmidt. He was reasonable. You could have signed him. You could have gotten Christian Walker. You said that Pete Alonso isn't a fit over there. I kind of understand the reason for that, but you need a power hitting first baseman. They were out there, and you have all those prospects. You know what prospects are? They're nothing until they do anything. Yeah. Remember Jared Kelenic? Where's he?
Right. No, I don't get me started on Jared Kelenic. Oh my God! Oh man, yes, no, I 100%.
No, start on Jared Kelenic. Go.
Oh no! I'll be honest with you. He was, and I wished him all the best when he went to Atlanta. But that move in particular, and you talk about from the flip side when the team was kind of waving the white flag and rebuilding, he was a big part of that, and everything kind of centered around him. And I'll tell you right now. Thank God Julio Rodriguez just emerged and had the first year he did in that Jared Kelenic phase of the Seattle Mariners, because it was tough to watch. He had some attitude issues that he had to clean up. I'm sure when he got to Atlanta with a different presence over there, hopefully he cleaned that up. But it was tough. It was tough going having him in the clubhouse, especially too when that was kind of your motive, right? To have that big young core of players coming through. I just think with the Mariners, and you talk about Pete Alonso, I just think that a situation where they and again, I'm speaking from the team, not from me. Yeah. Trust me, I'd love for him to go out and buy 3 players, turn into the Dodgers, of course. But I think that the way they kind of structure their lineup, and I'll get to a DH situation in just a second. With Pete Alonso, it just cuts down on your versatility, and they really center their team around having that versatility in regards to guys that can go, multiple positions in the infield. They kind of have to. And then also, too, from a DH role. So Mitch Garver, for example, man, when you look at this team, they had a couple of big acquisitions they made. One was Mitch Garver, and he was coming off a year, played in the playoffs with the Texas Rangers, I wouldn't call it a career year, but a really good year. 2-year, $24 million. You'd pay him $12 million. He was the worst.
World Series
champion. He'll be the first to tell you. What's that?
World Series champion.
World Series champion. Yeah. He will be the first to tell you worst 4 to 6 months of his life last year in Seattle. It was terrible. You get a 2023 version of Mitch Garver in there. You get you get a Victor Robles. You get him 2 months earlier from what he did last year. You get a Julio Rodriguez who turned it on for 6 weeks. You turn that into a 4-month stretch. Completely different story what you're looking at, and that's a completely different offseason going into this year as well for the Seattle Mariners. They last year crushed them, especially from an offensive standpoint. And I know, David, you shared that article about the park factor of the Seattle. That hurts them too. If you're a big free agent, Pete Alonso, who's aging, he's getting late in his 30s. It's going to be tough, man, to pull him in. You're going to have to overpay him a little bit, and that goes with years, not just money. And you're going to say, oh, by the way, your power production is going to. He didn't have to tell him. He knows. You're not going to get him in there. So you have to get guys in your trade. Let's get honest.
So
well, thank
okay,
God that's not an option anymore.
I'm just joking. What's that?
I said, thank God that's not an option anymore because Pete is back with my New York Mets.
Yes, he is so excited about it. All right, I got two questions here. One, I do want to hit that article a little bit, but two, all of the prospects coming up are position players. All of their top 7 prospects, I think it is, that are in the MLB top 100. It just came out on MLB.com, so go there, check that out. They're all position players, which is really interesting, right? Because I mean, maybe the run was right before this. Obviously, was when you get the Logan Gilberts, George Kirby, Bryce Miller, Brian Wu. Absolutely incredible. Those players coming up, and then the bullpen pieces. Do you think DePoto's waiting on some of those guys coming up? And my concern is that by the time these players come up, like Cole Young, an Emerson, a Harry Ford, by the time they come up and actually become impact players, then you've already lost the Logan Gilbert. You already lose a George Kirby or Miller or Wu. They're already gone, and now you just switch your team from this pitching I'll say this best pitching staff in baseball. You basically switch that to a solid offensive team. Are you concerned that you're going to end up with this? You're just kind of switching one for the other.
Well, 100%. Look, Jerry DePoto, and let's not forget, at the end of last year, Scott Service, it was an ownership move, and they said, look, Scott Service, we're making a move, which I was shocked about because Jerry DePoto and Scott Service were, one in the same essentially. They essentially, came in. Scott Service came in, a year or so right before the rebuild. When they decided to rebuild, that was a collaborative effort from ownership to front office to coaching staff. Scott Service was essentially, connected to the GM, like a lot of these managers are now. When I saw that, I was like, man, all of a sudden that leash is so much shorter for Jerry DePoto in a sense where, yes, you can build the top 100 farm system, and kudos to Jerry DePoto for doing that. Kudos to the fact that the way they develop pitching. But you mentioned something, you hit on something very interesting. You have a great pitching staff. Logan Gilbert, George Kirby. I'll throw Bryce Miller in there as well. Luis Castillo, he's tied up for the next couple of years. They're about to get very, very expensive. By the time, and you mentioned some of these prospects, I'm talking, Cole Emerson, Luzardo Montes, Cole Young, some of these guys. When they're not ready until they may get a call up, they're not ready to be impact players. You can get called up to the big leagues. Oh, he's ready for the big leagues. That's great. But to be an impact player, be part of that core, that's 2 years down the track. 2 years from now, man, you're looking at, again, you're looking at injuries, number one.
$1 million contracts.
100%. That's where it gets expensive. And if you want to play this, situation where the payroll stays the same, man, you've got some big decisions to make. So I think there is way more sense of urgency for 2025, and it's I'm not even want to talk about 2026. But when you saw that, I'm telling you, that urgency all of a sudden went through the roof when Scott Service was let go last year. And so I don't think, that's great. They've got a top 100, top farm system, top ranked in Major League Baseball, which is great. But that's definitely that sense of urgency. And I really believe too, I really believe that they were really close to pulling the trigger on whether it be one or two big trades. And I still feel like there's even that sense of urgency leading into spring training to make that happen, because you can't, like you said, you kind of change them one for the other. You cannot keep these guys 2-3 years from now way too expensive. And by the way, the other thing too, with some of these prospects, yes, they have the great farm system and everything else. There was kind of this gap, right? So they had this rebuild, and they did a fantastic job. We all know, like, these teams go, we're just going to rebuild, which I hate about Major League Baseball, where half the 3/4 of the league says we're just waving the white flag, going to rebuild. Fans stick around 3 years, we're going to be good. I can't stand that. If there's a system in place to fix that, would be amazing. They did a great job on the rebuild. They absolutely did. But the rebuild happened. Now it's the time to put the icing on the cake, and that's where it's been difficult. Not to mention, I said this earlier too, the 2024 offensive Seattle Mariners hamstrung them for this. We're talking for this offseason. If they had made a playoff run or whatever it may be, this offseason would have been completely different. I know it sounds ironic, because you're like, well, hold on, you're missing pieces. But just in regards to recruiting, having that initial Zoom meeting with Pete Alonso and trying to convince him, hey, check out our plane. Oh, look, Seattle's got great sushi. You know what I mean? All these little things. It's like, yeah, but by the way, you're going to hit 10 to 15 less.
Yeah, right.
Oh, by the way, you're getting into your late 30s. It's going to be even tougher. So that's kind of my point there. And I'm just using Pete Alonso as one example.
Right.
Okay, so I got to bring this up because we talked about it, and this is obviously one of the big things about the last year's Mariners. Mike Petriello of MLB.com, he's the stats analyst, wrote a great article. Again, go to MLB.com and check out that article. It's really cool about the Seattle Mariners and basically the ballpark, T-Mobile ballpark. There are some really interesting stats there where you're seeing splits, road splits versus home splits. You're seeing a lot of interesting numbers from the offense. So we mentioned the offense. Offense, obviously, we know there's been struggles with this team. Last year, they were 28th at home in slugging, 30th in average, 28th in runs, but they were 22nd, 15th, and 12th on the road. And basically the same was flipped for the pitching staff. They were first at home in strikeouts and 20th on the road, third at home in ERA, 15th on the road. There's something going on at that ballpark. There's something, and we always knew like this is a great place to pitch, a great place, incredible place to pitch. It's like pitching in Oakland at night versus the day. There's just something about Seattle where it works out. I just thought we were really good, but there's obviously something going on there. I actually looked back and looked at our stats, and I looked at your stats in 08. I looked at my stats in 09. 08, you had the most innings of your career, so looked at that. 09 was my, kind of my greatest year, my career. We sucked at home compared to the road. We actually didn't do as well. It was really interesting. And I looked across our stats on that team. Like we were in 09, we were 85 wins and I think 77 losses, something like that. It was a great team, like 101 losses the year before, whatever it was. Came back, had a great year in 09. Mm-hmm. But you did better on the road, and I did a little bit better on the road, like marginally. But our stats were almost exactly identical. Our hitter stats were almost identical as well. And it was really interesting to look at that. As a team, we pitched better at home than we did on the road. But you and I individually, and the team itself in 09 in particular, played almost identical. And so it's a really interesting thing to me is that we didn't take advantage of this enough. And maybe it's because you're a lefty and they're talking about righties that have kind of more of the advantage. But I wish I would have thought about this to take more advantage of this.
I think, and thinking of that too, because I did look back, at, like Adrian Beltre, classic example, right? Tears it up in LA. Mariners signed to a deal. And when he left, he went to Boston. It was his first. Boston. Yeah.
And just killed it.
What's that?
He killed it.
Yeah, Yeah. And the thing was there's this decline with Adrian Beltre physically, whatever, in Seattle, because there was that decline. He still put up good numbers, but from a power production standpoint, wasn't quite the same as and no one talks about this when they're playing. So I'll go during batting practice or I'll talk to some guys that, it can be a psychological thing. They kind of gloss over that a little bit. Then all of a sudden they leave like, oh man, I really struggle with hitting in Seattle or whatever it may be. I'll get to the batter's eye in just a second because there's a couple things on that, talking to former players about the batter's eye, because that's Oscar Hernandez created the whole, brought out engineers and scientists out to the ballpark. Oh my God, dude. I remember, by the way, just real quick, after that comment, he made one little comment at the All-Star break. The second half of the year, I swear to God, you'd have people like fans with measuring tape and all, and just, I'm like, it was insane. Like he kicked off, he stirred it up. That's for sure. I think though too, again, this is kind of without even looking into it. One thing with that article you mentioned, that the thing that surprises me is, some of the strikeout numbers as well, because usually like, oh, well, hey, look, contact number, any contact number you can look at and say, well, there's, the ball dies in the air. There's, less carry at T-Mobile because it's, 10 feet above sea level. And all those factors are pretty obvious from the get-go if you're not playing in a dome, right? But just the strikeout numbers is really surprising. And I think, too, talking to some former players, they do say, and when they go into depth about it, they talk about when they get in the box there, especially after 4 o'clock BP, and they've hit, and they're watching that ball, they take that swing, and they kind of glance in their peripheral, watching that ball, and didn't quite get out. Like, man, that ball just kind of died. They get in at 7 o'clock and they hit. And I've talked to some, again, only guys who are not there anymore. The guys who are playing there, they don't want to talk about it. But the guys who have been there, they said there's just this psychological thing where you feel like you have to do just a little bit more. David, you know how it is, man. Like when you're tired and you try and throw even harder and you can't, leave the ball in the middle of the strike zone, whatever it may be. And so hitters like, man, I just feel like I've just got no juice right now. Plus the game, and you mentioned our numbers back when it was 08, 2009. The hitter's approach is obviously different. The guys that don't care about swing and miss so much, and they're trying to launch baseballs. Whereas I think back in 08, 2009, whether you're a power hitter or not, there's more of that contact and keep the ball flat. And the other part too, and you just gestured about, keeping the ball flat. Like Nelson Cruz talked about this. I remember talking to him. He was back in Seattle. I said, hey, man, you've played at different ballparks. You put up numbers everywhere, even Seattle. He said, one thing with me, he goes, one thing I was really conscious of here, and it's easy when you're 110 exit velo every time. He goes, I'm just trying to hit the ball, I'm trying to keep it level with the pitcher's head. And so he's trying to keep that ball. So the launch, when you look at the guys who can have that good exit velo, Julio Rodriguez, who can gap up balls and keep that launch a little shorter, less launch on the ball, they have more success if you're physically capable of doing it. Like for a Pete Alonso, he averages more of a high launch angle, and he can get the ball up in the air enough carry because he's got enough power. I keep talking about Pete Alonso, by the way, because I can see his name flashing up on my thing here about him signing with the Mets. But with him, again, guys who launch the ball in the air. Mike Zunino talked about it. Mike Zunino talked about trying to get the ball up in the air. He said when he went to Tampa, finally he kind of realized, like, wow, okay, I don't have to do as much right now when I get the ball up higher at a higher launch angle, and he had that all-star season. So there is some of that involved too. Again, easier said than done. Hitting the ball on a line is not, automatic. Mike Trout's numbers at T-Mobile are ridiculous. And I'm just
he loves it.
What's that?
I think he loves it. I think his numbers probably everywhere are pretty ridiculous.
Everywhere. But I'm talking about just like in general in regards to, and when you look at, you dive into how
there's no split.
He doesn't. Yeah. And when you look at the average, when you're talking about how much he launches in T-Mobile, because that's the one thing. That's the one thing that keeps coming up. You get the ball high enough in the air, it's going to die. You can keep it below that, call it whatever that threshold is. The ball is going to jump a little bit. So, just back to the batter's eye. The one thing that surprised me a little bit, and maybe it's a psychological thing, but looking at some of the swing and miss numbers at T-Mobile, which is interesting. I find that interesting. Now, the wall is angled, right? It's public. You can go on, look on Google Images, and you can see it is angled. I know Edgar Martinez made those comments about the wall being a little bit obscure. The thing was too, they used to have trees out there. If anyone remembers back, if any Mariner fans remember, they used to have these big evergreens in front of that black wall, and hitters complained about that. Said, "Oh, they can't see because of these trees." And so they got rid of the trees. Problem was when they had the trees were actually pretty straight on, whatever you call it, perpendicular to the mound, like to the mound and the header. And then all of a sudden this wall, because just the way the ballpark shape is kind of angled, got rid of the trees. Well, they're stuck with this angled wall. So there could be something in that. I know it got in so many hitters' heads when Teoscar Hernandez said that. They all started going, "Oh yeah, it does look a little bit different." So there's a lot to say about it. Again, going back to this Mariners offseason, just another reason why it's hard to get that good recruiting tool, besides how good sushi is in Seattle, to bring.
Hey, last thing for me, because I know you got to get out of here at some point. We can't keep you here forever. Your former teammate, Ichiro, going into the Hall. Yes. What are your thoughts? And did he sign a jersey for you saying, great hair, better than your brother-in-law, etc.?
No, I do have a jersey signed by him, but I didn't get him. I should go. Did you get, Dave? You got a personalized message on yours or something?
Yeah, in Japanese, he wrote, "Pray for hair growth."
No way. Oh man, what was I thinking? I didn't want to bug him. See, I'm like doing this one. I'm like, can you sign this quickly? I think
when we go to Seattle for his jersey retirement, all I want is a card signed. You have better hair than David. Ichiro.
Nice. Oh, for sure. But no, hey, listen, awesome. It was, I get starstruck easy all the time, whether it's baseball players or whoever. I'm a bit of but with Ichiro, I remember, getting called up. I was 24, just some nobody from Australia. And I remember they even had the name on the back of my jersey spelt wrong when I got to the big leagues my first day. I got it. Ted Walsh hooked me up. He got it out there to the bullpen. I swear to God, I was just like, oh man, what a loser! Like they can't even spell my name right. I'm in the big leagues. You kidding? But I'm there. I'm like, oh man, I just remember Ichiro, like he was just larger than life. Really, he really was. And just getting a chance. There's so many little stories, little nuances that he had that just made him who he was, and just unbelievable. And the thing was too, Dave, you know this too, man. Like guys like, oh yeah, he doesn't really talk to anyone. You've got to make an effort with him. You have to make an effort with him, and he will talk your ear off. You can say, hey, what are you doing for dinner tonight? And he'll be like, hey, but you have to kind of schedule it. He's like, hey, tomorrow night I'm going to this restaurant. Why don't you come with me? You know what I mean? Like that, he'll do that, but you have to make the effort. But man, just unbelievable. And by the way, everything he did, and David can attest to this too, every little thing he did, the way he sat on the plane, everything he ate, time he got to the ballpark, how he slept, everything was centered around him being the best player on the planet until the day he's told he's got to retire. It never, ever stopped with him. It was unreal. I mean, I was in the clubhouse. I had to go pitch in winter ball after my rookie year. They wanted me to go pitch in winter ball. And 2 days after the season, I'm like, I'm going to start throwing. No one's there. It's a ghost town. And the security guy said, there might be a few visitors in here, but you've got the whole place to yourself. I'm like, wow, 24 years old. Look at this. This is unreal. Well, guess who? I walk in day one, lights are on, and it's him just taking dry swings 2 days after the season. It's just mind-blowing. Anyway, but yeah, no, I'm happy for him. It's super cool.
You said that you get starstruck. Who did you get more starstruck with, Ichiro or Junior?
Oh man, I'd say Junior because when year was that he came back? 2009.
09. But it was like halfway through spring training or whatever it was.
I remember. I was really nervous. Like I remember, I was nervous the days before because I'm like, okay, this is the dude I used to watch. Yeah, back when he was on The Simpsons growing up. Simpsons was massive in Australia. Here I'm like, this dude is on this friggin' Simpsons. I remember Jeff Clement, Dave?
Yeah.
So I said to Jeff, I'm like, hey, man, like it's like we huddled together. He said, we're just like praying, just saying, please don't be a douche. Just be cool. You are going to ruin childhood memories. Please be cool with me. Like, don't just big league the shit out of me when you walk in the room. And he wasn't. He was amazing, and I think our little icebreaker was he knew some Australian PGA golfer or some.
Of course, he did.
Some big wig, yeah. And I'm like, oh yeah. He's like, oh, do you know him? I'm like, me? Are you kidding me? I'm like, no. Yeah, that was our little icebreaker. So he was awesome, man. He was cool.
Well, if you're ever in New York, Junior and I are partners in a restaurant. Come on down. You get run of the house, whatever you want. Alex, I think will agree. You know what? Ryan likes The Simpsons. Ryan likes. I think I like him more than I like you, David. I'm gonna start hanging out with Ryan.
Huge Simpsons psycho fan.
That's awesome.
The Simpsons was like it was in the States, prime time. That baseball episode, it was heaven for me. We had no.
I'll text you later, Ryan. We'll talk.
Hey, last thing. So everyone in Seattle, it's snowing up in Seattle. So they basically canceled all the schools. So Ryan and Amanda took the kiddos up to Whistler. How is the snow right now? Is it like perfect?
It's a little icy. I'm not going to lie. And my little man, my 6-year-old, any little bit of ice, he's like, "Oh, Dad, there's ice!" Like it's like all of a sudden he's going to fall off a cliff or something, or he's going to slide down into a hole into the abyss. So we went quickly. We got up here yesterday afternoon. Quick trip because they closed schools. Like, let's go to Whistler for a few days because the kids don't have school. And the snow. It was good. Not a soul on giant 4-kilometer run. I can't remember. I can't remember what kilometers into miles. But anyway,
I'm about to say that's about like a 2.1 miles.
Super long. We're cruising, and then boom, we hit this little ice patch, and all of a sudden, Lennox just freaked out. Yeah. But no, I love it up here. It's amazing. Just don't come here on a weekend. It's a zoo. That's why we just snuck up here on a couple of weekdays because we had a few off days. So yeah, but no, good times.
Ryan, thank you so much, man. This was a real treat for me finally getting to meet you. Let's do this again soon. And like I said, when you're in New York, you better give me a holler.
Absolutely.
Rowland-Smith, the host of The Top Step. Thank you very much, my friend.
Welcome, guys. Appreciate it anytime. Thank you.
Thank you for being on, brother.
Dude, your brother-in-law is cool as hell.
Yeah, he's way cooler than me. I've told you this. Like, people are way cooler than me. I don't know why we do this thing. He's way better.
Because it takes too long to break in a new friend. I mean, let's just call it what it is. If I had to put in the work that I did with somebody else that I did with you over the last 15 years, forget it. I'd lose my hair. All right. A lot of fun with Ryan. Let's move on to the story of the day I've been waiting for. And by the way, before we get started with it, if you look over my shoulder right here, you'll see this beautiful Mets sign that my good friend Mr. Aardsma got me for Christmas that we did together. So it's only fitting that I unveil it today when the Mets unveil their first baseman, Pete Alonso, who signed a 2-year deal. David, go.
Love it. Love everything about it. I've been a big proponent that it is ridiculous that he hasn't been signed yet. I thought he was going to get more money, but again, he ended up getting the same money that he wanted, essentially, just in a much shorter format. But he got the 1-year contract, a big old signing bonus, and then he has an opt-out. Sorry, it was a 2-year contract. Signing bonus of $10 million. He gets an opt-out in there. I think this is a great deal for both sides personally. I thought 2 years would have been the best deal for the Mets. At the same time, what happens? He goes out there and he hits 40 home runs, 35 to 40 home runs, which he's probably going to do. He's going to drive in about 100 RBIs, and he's going to hit about 250. So we know this. That's what he does. But now when you look at this lineup, you get Lindor, Soto, Alonso, and then Vientos or Nimmo or however they want to throw those guys in there, and you know, Alvarez. I don't know how they're going to figure this all out. But at the end of the day, you have Alonso behind your bats. You spent, I don't know, what was it, $800 million? I don't even know the number. The ridiculous number for Soto. The stupid, ridiculous number for Soto. Spend a little bit more to make sure Soto's protected. And again, if Alonso doesn't go out there and do it, dude, like, you're good. You didn't really lose anything. Yeah. And if he does, perfect. You can always bring him back. You can bring, or you can go out the free agent market and get the guy you really wanted. But you need protection behind Soto. That's the one thing about Soto. He isn't an end-all, be-all offense. He is a get on base, grind at bats, make the pitcher worried about him, stare at a ball that's 1 inch off the plate, and the umpire happened to get lucky and called a ball, and he stares at you, and he creates these at-bats that then create the next at-bat. That's the beautiful part about what Soto does. It's not that at-bat, it's the next batter that he's really affecting, because the pitcher's working so hard to get him out, and Soto's going to get on base. He's not a 55 home run guy, so he's going to get on base, double, single, whatever it is, walk. The next hitter is the most important guy in that lineup. It's not Soto, it's the next hitter. And so Soto and Lindor are going to create really tough at-bats, however you figure that out again. But then you got Alonso behind him, would have to pitch to Soto. And that's the thing that all these Mets fans, I got worn out on MLB Network Radio when I was on there, when I was on here and I'm talking about it. I got absolutely worn out. So all these Mets fans, we don't need anybody behind them. We got everybody. No. You got Vientos, who was an absolute stud, had a great year last year when he was there. Incredible year. Dude, that's the next up-and-coming guy. And if he does that again, then you don't need Alonso. Perfect. But you have to prove it to me. I need 2 years, guys. I need 2 years to prove to me that you can take over the number 2 home run hitter since he came into the league. I need somebody that can prove they can do that, or just bring back that dude that's hitting bombs left and right. So I think it makes this offense really deep. And if I looked at this offense like right now, day one, and didn't know what they did last year, I'd say this is a really good offense. And then I look at the pitching and go, okay, I like where they're at in pitching, knowing what Manaea did, Senga, Montas, like Clay Holmes. I love bringing in Clay Holmes. Okay, we're solid. We're not ace heavy, but we're a lot of threes. Like we're all like 2s and 3s. I can win a lot of games with 2s and 3s, especially in this day and age where I don't need guys to go 7-8 innings every single day. We got a lot of 2s and 3s. Now it's all right. Is Diaz going to do his thing? Is Minter going to be better? Is Stanek going to be the guy that he was in Houston? Like, now we got some of those questions that I think we'll figure out. And at the end of the day, if the bullpen's not pulling their weight, they can always bring guys in during the season. Bullpen trading's so easy. That's nothing. So that's the last thing I'm worried about.
Yeah, I think the Mets still need one more pitcher in the front. I don't know who that might be. There was rumors about Dylan Cease. There are plenty of players out there, and the Mets bought themselves a farm system a couple of years ago, and they have players that are available. Acuna, if you want to do that. I mean, personally, I'd still like to see Acuna start the year as the starting second baseman and put McNeil out to pasture, or at least make him a DH, but I don't make those decisions, unfortunately. And I think they're also one really good reliever away. Those are the two pieces that I'd really want. I'd love to get Kenley Jansen in here. I think he might be a little too much. But now that the Mets are over the luxury threshold, they might be willing to say, screw it, we're over already. Why not just go a little more?
Do you take a chance on Kimbrel?
No.
I
think he's cooked.
I mean, do David Robertson?
Yes. I like David Robertson.
He's the guy. To me, he's the guy. Kenley Jansen is great, dude. I loved him. Loved him when I played with him, and he's a effing stud of a pitcher. Dutch, so you got to give it to my boy, my freaky D Dutchman. But at the end of the day, like, to me, I need a guy that's versatile, and I don't think Kenley's the versatile guy. I don't see him coming in the 7th and the 6th if you really needed him in that bat. He's more of a closer, lock in his role, and that's amazing. Cool, that's your thing. But you got Edwin Diaz. He's your closer. Like, that's it. You're locked in. The thing about David is he's done it all. He's closed games in the biggest situations there are for the biggest teams. He always seems to find himself in a playoff hunt in the playoffs and doing everything. Bring in David Robertson. Like, it'll cost you 10. It'll cost you $8 to $10 million, whatever, maybe 12. But the dude is a setup man, and sit there and, like, the moment Edwin Diaz, like, it's hurt or something happens, he can take over the role. And you don't even have there's nothing, like, there's no issue. You're like, hey, David, you got it. Like, and he's like, yep. Okay. And then, like, Diaz comes back, saying, David, you're in the 8th. Okay. Like, there's no ego with him. It's just results. And that's the guy. That's the dude you have to have in the bullpen, especially when you have a closer. Kimbrel's a closer. Kenley's a closer. Like, Kimbrel has proven he can't pitch in anything besides closing roles. And even at this point, it's just not the same. Right. Kenley can get the job done, but he's a closer. And I'm not going to trust an 8th inning to a guy who hasn't really over years proven the way David has.
All right, so we've talked about all the X's and O's with the team, how Pete Alonso going back affects the lineup, et cetera, and everything we can do. I want to talk a little bit more about the personal aspect now. Tell me a little bit about the clubhouse. When you are a teammate of Pete Alonso and you saw everything that went on, what are you expecting from him when he walks into spring training? And what is his headspace after this long negotiation where you're hearing people saying, oh, they might not want you?
It's hard. It's hard. Those guys, they put a smile on their face, but sometimes it's not genuine. When they see the front office guys, it's no longer like, oh man, I love this place. It's like there's a little resentment there. You see the GM walk through the team. You see the owner walk through, and there's a little bit of like a FU behind them. Like, a little bit like it's that relationship where you're dating somebody, or like you still are together, but you just kind of resent them, and that's what it is.
I know that
you put up with it because it's familiar, and they're giving you everything you need. At the same time, you just know you don't like each other a little bit. And at the end of the day, though, when it's business, and the business of baseball isn't always pretty, and their Mets' job is to make their team better and to be smart about money. Your job is to be really good at baseball and make as much money as you can. Those things come and clash sometimes, and this is one of those moments. So at the end of the day, what needs to happen is Cohen and I just can't. David Stearns and Pete need to sit down and, honest to God, have some lunch, have a dinner or a steak, and say, hey, business is business. Like, our job is not to pay you the most money in the world. Your job is to make as much money as you can. We're going to disagree. Are we happy, or can we get over this, and can we go out there and win some effing ball games? This is to me the classic. In when I was in New York, the GM there. I'm just dying for it right now. Dying on names.
Which New York?
Yankees.
Brian Cashman.
Cashman walked in the clubhouse. There's a lot of rumors about trades and a lot of rumors about signing guys in spring training. He said, my job is to make this team as good as humanly possible. Your job is to play as good as humanly possible to either make this team or another team. He goes, it doesn't matter. Your job is to play baseball as well as you can. And whether it's for the New York Yankees or it's for somebody else, if you play well enough, you will have a uniform and be making a lot of money for yourself. My job is to be smart about our money and to make this team as good as humanly possible, whether that's with you or without you. And we'll use you to trade to get guys here, but that my job is different than your job. Respect my job, and I respect the hell out of your job. And sometimes you just got to look at a guy and go, I don't have to like you. I don't have to agree with you. At the end of the day, I can get over it and play baseball. And that's where we're going to be fine.
I think this whole saga might end up being one of the best things that ever happened for Pete Alonso and his brand. Because last year, I'm in New York. I'm a Met fan. I listen to all the radio and whatnot over here, as we know. It seems to me that the Mets fans got down on Pete the last couple of years because his power numbers were going down. And I was one of them at one point. But the fact that it took so long to get him back and the Mets fans are so happy to get him back, I think that they are going to go balls to the walls, love for Pete all year. He's going to have one of those seasons where you're just like, yeah, this is why you love me. And next year, if he opts out or the year after, I think he's coming right back.
The lowest amount of home runs he's hit minus COVID years, 34, and that was last year. Like, the dude's like a home run machine. The guy does well. He's gonna be great. And at the end of the day, when he comes up big and hits a big home run in the first opening weekend, people are gonna go crazy. I just don't want Pete to put too much pressure on himself, try to prove the contract, prove this. Just go play baseball, see ball, hit ball, and drive in runs. And because there's gonna be plenty of run opportunities with Soto, Lindor, and whoever else may be in front of them, Nimmo or whatever. There's gonna be plenty of opportunities driving runs.
Yeah. One quick thing before we move on to our next segment, a little quick note, and I think this is actually pretty important. The Pittsburgh Pirates signed Tommy Pham today to a $4 million deal, or late last night. Not a bad move.
Sure, it wasn't the Arizona Diamondbacks.
I could have swore I read Pittsburgh.
Maybe wrong. I might be wrong. You might be wrong. What's what we'll look at right now? We're doing this live, people. This is what's live.
Tommy Pham, Pirates, 1-year deal.
Good. Awesome. Okay. Hey, good player. Great guy. Oh, I was thinking Grichuk. Sorry. I was thinking Randall Grichuk. They brought him back, I think, last night or this morning or something. That's what I was thinking. Either way, I played with both of them in the exact same outfield in Memphis, Tennessee. So I'm like they're both Cardinals together with me. So I was like, oh, that's just Tommy Pham, Grichuk, same. They both played in the Diamondbacks. So whatever. Tommy Pham, great. I love him. I know he's got riled a couple people up lately, last couple of years.
He likes
kind of pissed some people off, and I love it. He starts it up. At the same time, I love Tommy. Great baller, just absolute baller. When the lights turn on, he turns on. He's got a chip on his shoulder, and he plays like it. And sometimes he talks like it, and that's what you're going to get. And I love it. And I like the sign of Randall Grichuk with the Diamondbacks. Gives you a pop, gives you a little outfield, a little versatility, be able to do a lot of stuff. Let's never forget, drafted before Mike Trout by the Angels. And everybody wears him out for that they thought he was better than Mike Trout. And it was slightly different careers, but incredible career by both of them.
A little bit. Very happy, though, for the Pirates. They needed a bat.
They need something. This isn't the bat that
he's on.
This isn't going to do anything for them. This isn't going to move the needle, but it makes them a more complete baseball team. If I'm looking at it and saying, hey, all right, this is a great secondary move that should have been made. But again, the Pirates need to make some of those bigger moves. I know they got young players, great, talented players, and they're going to let those players develop together. But at some point, just like Baltimore, you got to make a move that actually is going to move the needle. And I think they're going to do it next year. I think this offseason this next offseason going into 26, something has to happen. I think Baltimore does something during the year, and I think Pittsburgh does something after this year where they actually say, okay, now we know what team we are. Let's go.
All right, moving on. This is something that I never thought I'd be saying this soon, but have we seen the best of Shohei Ohtani? I was thinking about this the other day, and we have a guy right now in Shohei Ohtani who we all know we both love. We have a guy who's coming off of 2 major injuries. He's coming off of, his elbow, which kept him out from pitching last year.
And he's already had 2 Tommy Johns, by the way. This is his second Tommy John.
Is it a Tommy John, though? Because nobody's actually come out and said it was a Tommy John.
It's second Tommy John.
Okay. So he's had 2 Tommy Johns, and now he's got a torn labrum in his other shoulder. When is this going to catch up? Because we're getting to the point now, and I was thinking about this. I hope he's not Griffey at this point, where we saw so much good and we're waiting for him to be the best player of all time definitively, and then the little injuries start catching up. Are we going to see this version of Shohei Ohtani for the next couple of years, or is this the beginning of the end? Have we seen the best of Shohei?
As long as that shoulder is strong, I've got no problem with him pitching with that left shoulder being hurt. What you're watching right here, that's sliding into second base during the World Series. I think it was like game 1 or something like that. What was it? Well, game 2 maybe of the World Series. Definitely wasn't the same player after that. I don't think that's going to affect him pitching, but I do think the double Tommy John is going to affect him pitching. I think he's going to have a couple years under his belt. I don't think he's going to keep going as a pitcher. I don't think that's a long run. We haven't seen a whole lot of guys be able to come away from Tommy John. I did a little bit of research, checked it out, because of this, there's definitely some other articles out there. These are guys right now that have had 2 Tommy Johns that are coming back, right? Jacob deGrom, Shane McClanahan, Walker Buehler, Dustin May, Chris Paddock, and Ryu. Okay, so those are guys right now that had double Tommy John that are out there trying to make their comeback. Shane's this year, deGrom will be this year, Buehler last year a little bit, and May last year a little bit, but they'll be coming back this year. The jury's definitely out on those guys. Ohtani will be coming back this year, so jury's definitely out. But there's a couple guys that did have double Tommy Johns and were successful. Nathan Eovaldi is probably the most successful. Jameson Taillon, Daniel Hudson, Joaquin Soria back in the day. Actually, my coach, we coached together on our JD's baseball team, so Joaquin Soria and Chris Capuano. But the list is small, really small. And there's definitely a lot of guys that had to and didn't come back. Chris Medlin, Josh Johnson, let's see, the other one was like Brian Wilson. So there's a lot of guys that didn't come back, right? I'm just concerned that those will catch up. I'm not concerned about the left shoulder with pitching, but I do think as a hitter, that's going to affect him. And I don't think he's going to be quite the same for maybe like what we might have done was lost some years on the back end that we don't know about yet.
Yeah. You have a prediction for this year, what he might do? If I had to guess right now, and I'm looking at Ohtani, I say he's in the high 30s in home runs, low 20s, maybe high teens in stolen bases. I think his batting average might dip a little bit, getting used to that shoulder, and 15 starts. Does that sound about right?
I think 15. I'd be comfortable with 15. Look at it like last time he was a true dual player, like 22, the first time he was fully healthy, right? Or 23 was a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then he wasn't at the end and all that stuff. Like he had 44 home runs, 34 the year before, 270, 304. I mean, I look at it this way. I'm going to see probably that I see 15 to 20 starts. I see 40 home runs. I still think he's going to be a 35 to 40 home run guy. I don't see we're going to see as big of a dip on the offense compared to what he's been as a pitcher and offense side, but I do concerns on the pitching side, and that's going to be, you're not going to see the same Shohei Ohtani that's out there just dominant and locked in on locations. You're going to see a little less location, so a little stuff, but at the same time, it's a freaking Ohtani, man. Let's stop telling him what he can't do. Like this guy he always surprises us in what he can do, but at the end of the day, injuries are injuries.
Yeah. All right. As much as I love talking about Ohtani, we have gone long today. So let's go straight to our Chicago Cubs Mount Rushmore. David, tell us your Mount Rushmore for the Chicago Cubs.
First of all, I gotta say this. Cubs, man. I'm a Cubs fan. I grew up Chicago Cubs. My gift from my wife a couple Christmases ago was Ryan Sandberg signed baseball card. Above me, you can barely see there. I'll give you a little. Hang on. That's Ryan Sandberg up there. I am diehard Chicago Cubs fan growing up. Got the camera off a little bit.
And your autographed baseball card is right next to Sandberg's rookie in my display case, FYI, just because I know how much you love him.
Love Rhino. I actually don't have the list of guys in a row, so I don't want to mess it up. Who's the first one? I know who it is, but I don't know the list in a row.
Oh, let's just start with Ryan Sandberg.
Okay, Ryan Sandberg. my absolute stud, my favorite player of my career. I remember growing up in the 90s watching Rhino, or 80s and 90s watching Rhino. What you do as a Cub fan, like you come home from school, Cubs are on because of day game baseball. Incredible second baseman. 9 Gold Gloves, 7 Silver Sluggers, 10 All-Star teams, 1984 NL MVP, led the league in runs 3 times, triples once. He won a home run derby. Everybody's got to talk about home run derby. Numbers obviously retired in Chicago, but just a incredible second baseman, just doing crazy power stuff that second baseman didn't do. I did hear a lot of things like he didn't really necessarily sacrifice his body, wouldn't dive for stuff when balls are out there too much, but just I love Rhino, man. Just Rhino.
You know what's really funny? You just mentioned, I heard that he wouldn't sacrifice his body, and that was a knock on him. But when Bryce Harper sacrifices his body and gets hurt, that's a knock on him.
Well, yeah,
you can't win either way.
I mean, so stupid. Don't do all crazy stuff. There's a level of like here's what it is. You want your player to be a baller, but you want them to be healthy all the time doing it, like Pete Rose, just nonstop healthy doing it. But then when they get hurt, you go, all right, dude, like pump the brakes. Israel wouldn't necessarily sacrifice the body, but he would dive when he needed to.
Well, if it's game 7 of the World Series, you dive. If it's game 52 and you're playing the Pirates, let the ball drop. All right, who do you have next for your Mount Rushmore? I keep thinking Mount Everest. I don't know why. Mount
Everest. To me, this is the Mount Everest of Mount Rushmore because of the Chicago Cubs. Go Cubs, go! I'll just go right down the list. Ernie Banks.
Say hey, Mr.
Dude,
Cub.
let's play 2, man. I love this. Ernie Banks is absolute stud, obviously, as a Chicago Cub. Mr. Cub, you don't get that title for no dang good reason. Played every single game of his career, 2,528 games as a Chicago Cub. I do got to say this. He ended up hitting 500 home run club. I think what they did was they added the little fence, little like awning fence in Wrigley. Mm-hmm. To give him a couple extra feet on the home run so he could get the 500 towards the end of his career. God, I'm trying to look at it. I mean, back-to-back MVP awards, 14 All-Star games, 14 Gold Gloves, one Gold Glove. God, only one Gold Glove. But just absolute stud. I mean, just like it led the league in RBIs twice. I mean, I don't know. For me, Ernie Banks is like it's Mr. Cub with that big old smile. I loved it.
Every time I look at Mr. Cub, I think about Lindor. To me, they're like the same player. Both smiling, both really good defense. Like I don't know. I love them both.
Just like that kind of baby face too. Like
yeah.
Just like it's just like when you're a Cub fan and you just see him, you're just like you can't stop but like smiling. It's like seeing Willie Mays, with the Giants. Like you see him and you're like, oh man, like what's up? Like I want you to be like my grandpa and just hang out and like tell me stories.
Yep. Who do you got next?
Who do I got next? This man was a little. He was in the generation that I kind of missed. I didn't really see him as much. Ernie Banks, you learn a whole lot of. This guy, you always heard the name, but I didn't really get to know him and watch him too much. But I just know from a standpoint of how much he contributed to the Cubs, it was absolutely masterful. Billy Williams.
Billy Williams. I mean, this guy, a little bit before our time, but everybody that I've spoken to, they talk about what a great player Billy Williams was. And it's a shame that, these guys, Ernie Banks, Billy Williams, they really didn't have a chance to shine more because they never won any championships. But this guy should be in much higher regard in my estimation.
No, absolutely. And that's the big thing about it is like, they didn't win the big games. They didn't get to the World Series. It wasn't like they were sitting there and winning championships. So they didn't get on that pedestal nationally the way some other players would have. But a rookie of the year, absolutely. He's around the Cubs all the time. I think he's 5th in WAR and a Cub for a career WAR. And he's just one of those guys that like when you're a Cub fan and you're a Cubby, you know him and he's there and he's around the team a lot. But outside of that, you just don't you don't hear his name the way you hear about other players.
Yep. And finally, your last player is
slamming Sammy Sosa. Absolutely defined the 90s and early 2000s for the Chicago Cubs. The home run derby with him and Mark McGwire, the home run race to pass What, Mickey
It
Mantle?
was basically a home run derby.
It was basically a home run derby. That whole thing in 98 was absolutely insane. Like, his power was incredible. His stance, the way he celebrated home runs, everything kind of became iconic. His like double tap in the chest, kissing the lips, and then like thanking God. Like, you just, that little hop after he hits home runs, just insane amount of power. And the thing was, like, yeah, we can all have conversation about why and like how it got there. At the same time, though, the swing was absolutely beautiful and perfect, and you couldn't get a fastball by him to save your life. He might take some huge, massive hacks. He might have had a back corked a time or two, but it was just insane. Like, so he sits out there, he hits 66 home runs, he hits 63 home runs, 50 home runs, 64, 49, 40. He drove in 100 runs, like just an insane amount of times. It's amazing that he got kind of brushed aside by the Cubs so easily, brushed aside by the Hall of Fame. I understand the reason why with the Hall of Fame and stuff, but by the Cubs, that never made sense to me. I know there was issues there, some weird stuff. At the end of the day, the dude like brought people to the ballpark every single day, and they came to watch him play. He was a player you came to watch, and this is the first year they finally brought him like the Cubs Fest or whatever. It's absolutely sad to me that he just like gets brushed aside as if it never happened.
Let's call it what it is. He and McGwire saved baseball after the strike. So you don't like steroids, fine, but don't belittle what the man did. If you have a problem with him, the only thing I have an issue with is why did he bleach his face? Other than that, I'm cool.
A lot of stuff about that. We can get down to another episode. Like, there's actually some really interesting stuff about the dynamic in Dominican about that and why people do that. We see it and think it's crazy. There's a cultural thing about that.
He's whiter than you are now.
Yes, he is.
I mean, he's actually white.
Yes, yeah,
like a sheet of paper.
It's so crazy. But the dude was an absolute machine. And like you said, saved baseball. Him and Mark McGwire saved baseball. And they were giving out awards to him. NLVP, hit 158 RBIs. They were giving these awards away left and right. And then at the end of the day, they go, yeah, but shame on you for how you did it. Everybody knew what was happening at the time. Stop it with these writers. Stop putting yourself on this high horse. You were giving out the awards, knowing what guys were doing, and then afterwards going, yeah, but I didn't like how they did it now. Screw all of you guys. I loved him as a player. I had a Sosa jersey. He was just incredible to watch. I'm glad. I would have loved to have faced him right in his prime. Like, him and Mark McGwire would have loved in their prime to face him.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you had any experience facing him, but I'm glad that you answered that. And we're definitely going to talk more about the Hall of Fame next week. I had a interesting experience with some friends a couple of weeks ago while we were watching some football, and we had a lot of Hall of Fame conversations, and I want to bring them to you because we talk about Hall of Fame pretty often. Before we go to our final segment, let me know who is your guy on the way that has a chance to go into the Mount Rushmore. And let me know who is your last man out.
All right, so the last man out, the first man out. I've got two classic Cubbies. One was a guy that played in the 1800s. So I'm not going to list those guys necessarily on this unless that's like Cy Young. I think he's like 1914. But like Cap Anson, actually the Cubs leader in WAR. The dude was just absolutely insane with how he did. He played 22 seasons in Chicago, hit 330, 4 batting titles. I mean, all-time leaders in hits, runs, RBIs, doubles, Hall of Famer and 39. To me, it's a little too early. And you can't, when you think of Chicago Cubs, you don't think, oh, Cap Anson. Like, oh, yeah, like Cap Anson. Like, I don't think he defined what Chicago, being a Chicago Cub, is for now, but absolutely crazy numbers. And Ron Santo, to me, this is a hard one. He's actually the number 2. He's actually the number 1 leader in WAR in today's era, or like whatever it is, like live ball era, whatever you want to call it. It was a hard one for me because as a Cub, a lot of people recognize him as a Cub and love it for what he did as a Chicago Cub. Now he's a Hall of Famer. Unfortunately, they put him in Hall of Fame after he passed away, which is kind of crazy, especially with how good he was. His numbers retired, played 14 years. Amazing stuff. 5 Gold Gloves, 9 batting titles, or 9 all-star teams. it's just, I think those other guys represented like what it meant to be a Cub a little bit more. He like loved it, died hard, like, but he fought so hard to be in the Hall of Fame. I think it turned a lot of people off. Where Billy and Ernie just kind of like always had this smile and just was. And to me, I just thought those other ones just represented a little bit more. And so I don't know. Like, disagree with me as much as you want, and I will never disagree with you on that one on Ron Santo. But it was a hard one for me. And then when you look at the team now, it's a little difficult. Like when I put the list together, the one guy I thought that could make this list, it's going to take a lot of work, but he's on a great start, is Justin Steele. Incredible start to his career as Chicago Cub. It's going to be incredibly difficult in this day and age as a starting pitcher to make a list like this, especially with some of the historic players they have. But at the end of the day, if he keeps pitching like he did, especially his rookie year, almost a Cy Young award, like 2 years ago, almost like Cy Young candidate, like right there. If he just keeps pitching like that, you got to look at him and think maybe he'll be the best pitcher in Cubs history, because there aren't a whole lot of like crazy pitchers. Fergie would be the one guy I would really think is right up there, is probably the best pitcher in Ferguson Jenkins, best pitcher in Cubs history. You got Mordecai Brown, obviously. He was Mordecai Brown. Damn. Forgot he was a pretty damn good player too. But Greg Maddux, but Greg Maddux was really, brave when he would separate himself rookie of the year, I think, with the Cubs, stuff like that. But
there's
maybe
one guy who hasn't been in this conversation that I'm surprised hasn't been brought up. I don't know if he should be on the Mount Rushmore, but the Hawk.
Oh, here's the problem with the Hawk. Andre Dawson, dude, die hard Andre Dawson fan, the Hawk fan. He was so good in Montreal. He didn't go in as a Cub. Went in as an Expo in the Hall of Fame. And that, to me, just did not spend enough time in Chicago to put himself in a level like Mark. I would have Mark Grace above Hawk, and that's the thing. Like, Mark Grace represented probably more what it meant to be a Cub than the Hawk, because he just spent too much time in other places.
God, I remember when Mark Grace was a rookie, and all I wanted was Mark Grace and Chris Sabo rookie cards. Those were the two big first baseman chases in '88, I'd like to say.
Most hits in the 90s. He had more hits in the 90s than Tony Gwynn, which it's like, what? Like, how does that even happen? How does anybody have more hits in the 90s than Tony Gwynn? But Mark Grace did.
Yeah, I got to meet Mark Grace when he was working with the Diamondbacks organization. I was hanging out with JJ Putz one time, and he happened to be there. Seems like a nice guy. I didn't really get to talk to him too long.
Yeah, great guy. I've never heard anything bad about him. It's good. Just he is what it is. He's Mark Grace.
All right. Before we let you go today, last week there was the passing of someone who we had gotten to know a little bit over the years. I had spoken to him many times when I worked at MLB Network Radio, MLB.com, and that is former Commissioner Fay Vincent. He passed of cancer last week, and the baseball world and the world will miss a gentleman. So before we let you go, we are going to give you a quick little snippet of an interview that we did with him about 10 years ago. And he was talking about what players can do to interact with fans and how he would make the game more interactive so that young people could really enjoy the game. Remember, subscribe, like, comment, and we'll see you next week, everybody. Here's our little interview with Mr. Fay Vincent.
If the players were properly coached or encouraged by people like me, commissioners or others, to say, look, we want you to spend more time with parents, and David, when you're finished pitching and you're out in the bullpen, we want to have some access to a couple of fathers and their kids, and we're going to reward kids who have high grades in sixth grade, and they're going to come with their father, and they're going to be able to go in the bullpen in between innings, so they're not intruding on anything, and shake hands. In other words, I think extending the opportunities of parents and fans to interact with players and provide bonding between. I mean, imagine if Harper and some of the other greats would be available. I remember talking to players, and I said to the players sometimes, look, these fans are paying your salary. And when you dump on them and treat them rudely over autographs, now I know they come to me for autographs, and I'm part of it too, but the fact is that they are the owners of the game.